They burned a village to steal power and thought no one would care. But Earth answered not with vengeance, but with silence sharp enough to unmake an empire. Shade Fleet didn't wage war. It dismantled tyranny, one nerve at a time, until even the stars begged for mercy. Then came the shards, cosmic predators drawn by ruin, and humanity had to become more than strong. It had to become kind. Now the galaxy is held together by a hand once scarred by fire, offering not dominance, but balance. Stay with us to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. The Galactic Directorate liked to tell bedtime stories about itself, tales of enlightened order, 5 centuries of prosperous equilibrium, harmony between core and frontier. Millions believe those stories because the Directorate seal glittered on every credit chip and every school hollow. But seals and slogans were only bright paint on rot, and rot spreads outward until one careless boot cracks the shell and releases the smell for everyone to gag on. The boot landed when Decree 17 Delta passed through the Central Forum in under 11 minutes of open debate. Decree 17 Delta, as clerks stylized it, rewrote the Charter of Colonial Autonomy. In public, it was billed as a Security Harmonization Act. In private memos, it was spelled out with brutal tidiness. Strip outer human provinces of energy governance, confiscate strategic resources, impose behavioral quotas. The votes were lopsided. Non-human delegates offered their I-tokens in exchange for future leverage, and human loyalists too deep in Directorate pockets pressed green rather than jeopardize their pensions. When the Central Holoboard flashed adopted, no celebration followed. Only the crisp hiss of environmental recyclers, like the hall itself exhaling a secret it knew was foul. On the spiral rim world of Ariada Vesper, nobody followed form vote tallies. The settlement perched on pastel cliffs above an ultraviolet sea, famous for glowkelp farms and skydance festivals. Its entire defense grid consisted of one rusted coil cannon aimed at nothing in particular and a volunteer watch staffed by teachers after class hours. Ariada owned no warships, no orbital shield, just hope and a single high-efficiency fusion core that powered every pump feeding freshwater to the terraced kelp pools. 3 days after Decree 17 Delta, a Directorate landing barge loomed over the cliffs at dawn. Polished gunmetal hull, escorts bristling with pattern lock missiles, banners fluttering the Directorate chevron beside the smaller crest of the Praetorian Oversight Corps, the Directorate's internal muscle. Villagers gathered in sleepy curiosity. The morning breeze smelled of salt and ember flowers, and nobody thought to hide their children. Oversight Commander Lorik Vale descended the ramp, flanked by troopers in carbon masks. His orders were simple: audit the settlement, confiscate its fusion core, demonstrate deterrent authority should resistance manifest. The colony matriarch, Dr. Sarah Keene, a marine biologist whose hands still glowed faintly from kelp nutrients, greeted him with clipped courtesy and guided his inspection team toward the power dome. Halfway there, the protest began. Not a riot, just a semicircle of farmers and students holding fabric signs painted overnight. Water is life/autonomy, is not treason/we are still humans. They sang the chorus of an old diaspora hymn that thanked distant ancestors for finding unclaimed shores. Their song was too soft to drown out the hiss of oversight plasma rifles powering up. Commander Vale never raised his voice. He watched the banner edges flap, tapped the command key on his wrist pad, and spoke only once. Exemplar strike. Full yield. A gunship hovering above the cliffs banked, fired, and repainted dawn in roaring magfire. The coil cannon melted before its auto-target found a tone. Homes folded inward, fields vaporized to glass, and for an instant the ultraviolet sea flashed white, as though startled awake. Children who sang were gone mid-note, their echoes absorbed by rising ash. The entire sequence lasted 4 minutes 12 seconds. Directorate casualty log recorded 0 friendly losses. 12 dissident fatalities. Planetary networks received a sterilized bulletin. Ariada Vesper energy diversion incident resolved. Core requisition successful. No civilian deaths. Local drones, however, captured raw footage, Vale's gloved finger in the air, detonation blossoms, charred silhouettes still holding fabric that now read only "we" because the rest burned away. That footage slipped onto the outer mesh, bounced through pirate relays, and reached Earth 2 days later at 3:17 Universal Time Coordinated. Earth had no Directorate seat since Treaty Censure 81. It possessed observer status, no voice, no veto. Observers, by definition, observe. But humans watching Ariada's ruin did not merely observe, they remembered. Some remembered similar flames on older colonies. Others remembered diplomats promising that such flames would never recur. Memory sharpened into impetus when the clip paused on the wide shot, smoking craters forming the accidental shape of a child's handprint upon the cliff plateau. The next images never reached public feeds. Deep beneath the Andes, within a quartz-armored vault euphemistically labeled South American Power Grid Management, President Alice Mera convened the Obsidian Committee, A council so secret most of its members were legally dead. No holographs existed, only dim light and analog paper. Sentinel Prime, Earth's dormant strategic AI, booted after decades of embargo. Lines of antique code crawled across tungsten screens. Authority Protocol Obsidian. Status: dormant. Trigger review. Civilian mass casualty event. Human targets. Preemptive assault. Response threshold met. Awaiting executive override. President Maris signed one sentence in ink. Override confirmed. Initiate directive Umbra. Somewhere past the Oort margin, telescopes blinked offline. Binary beacons mistimed their pulses. Freighters queued at Mars anchorages found docking control absent. Air traffic officers reassigned for mandatory emergency drills. The media speculated about solar flares, never guessing humanity had pressed a different kind of switch, withdraw into silence. Every band Earth had ever used to plead for fairness went dead. Where once a jumble of songs and markets overflowed, now hung a void so total directorate analysts first believed a sensor fault. Silence, however, was not idleness. On the uncharted side of Lacale 9352C, shipyards hidden within hollowed asteroids opened hatch petals like iron blossoms. Inside, black keels stirred, craft neither registered nor nameplated, their hulls coated in metamaterial that swallowed radar and hope alike. Engineers called the line Shade Fleet during whisper sessions, but the official manifest said only Phantom Lance Units 117. Each cruiser's brain was a lattice of quantum knots trained on tactical ethics: measure twice, sever once, never maim the innocent. They required no figureheads, yet they bore a sigil etched in obsidian particles, a small white silhouette of an upraised child's palm, fingers splayed, defiant. At the fleet's core floated the flagship Umbra's Edge, a crescent so vast nearby asteroids orbited its gravity sheaths. Umbra's command dais resembled a forest of monoliths, each projecting tactical holograms whose surfaces remained black until a strategist desired context. The strategist who summoned context now was Admiral Saran Val, a woman rumored to have authored more virtual war simulations than the Directorate had commissioned across 5 centuries. Her gray eyes read kill ratios without blinking. Priority matrix, Val ordered. The AI overlay painted red glyphs: Directorate armories, comm vaults, propaganda transmitters. Civilian habitation nodes glowed soft blue, ringed by inhibition fields. Val spoke to her officers, each linked by neural lace that transmitted micro-emotions as clearly as sentences: precision, not wrath; justice, not carnage. They understood. Shade Fleet was not built to burn planets, it was built to slice the nerves of empires. The first incision came against Sentinel Bastion T Argon, a Directorate deep space radar fortress located inside a helium nebula, considered unassailable due to plasma storms shredding anything without storm-grade shields. Umbra's Edge ghosted through the tempest using kinetic null sheaths that drank momentum like black sponge. No missiles fired. Instead, the fleet injected sable ghosts, microsats the size of coins, through ventilation arrays. The ghosts rewrote security kernels, flipped IFF codes, and tricked the Bastion into believing its own reactors were foreign ordnance. Automated failsafes jettisoned those bombs into space, which meant the Bastion ejected every reactor core it owned, leaving the stronghold dark, powerless, and wondering why its own logs showed 0 breach alerts. 17 minutes later, the Directorate relay net hiccuped. Half its border defense grid shut down as nodes depended on T Argon's timing beacons. No one suspected humans. Directorate admirals blamed a meteor swarm. Shade Fleet kept cutting. A convoy of oversight troop carriers in the Osran corridor vanished entirely, victims of grapplers that pulled ships into cavernous pockets hidden within Umbra's flanks, where AI anesthetics whispered sleep until troopers awoke inside detention cells stocked with fresh rations and datapads loaded with Directorate warcrime archives. Not a single soldier harmed, not a single civilian ship touched, only military sinews severed with cold economy. Across Directorate worlds, rumors spread of black whiskers in the stars, of entire strike groups discovering their magazines empty, torpedoes replaced by cans of preserved fruit-bearing Earth brand seals. Mimetic war blossomed. Stolen ordnance with sardonic greeting cards, feed your people before you bomb ours. Commandeered billboards playing looped footage of Ariadas burning before cutting to the white palm sigil and the words "we warned you." Governors who tried to spin these events as terrorist sabotage found their own planetary archives leaking, each private embezzlement or covert slave labor contract spotlighted in nauseating clarity. Panic slithered into boardrooms of the Central Forum. Overseer Merrick Duran, architect of Decree 17 Delta, convened an emergency HOLA session. "We face assault by unknown elements," Duran declared, mustache quivering. "We require unity." But unity fled when planetary envoys replayed the Ariada bombardment in full and demanded to know why the official report cited 0 civilian casualties. Duran stammered about doctored feats. His stammer became legend in 15 systems within the hour, because someone hijacked the Directorate's public record channel and overlaid his sputtering face atop every government service hologram. The caption beneath read liar. The Directorate attempted negotiation. A courier drone flashed Entente codes toward Mars orbital pickets. Desire ceasefire. Propose humanitarian dialogue. The pickets kept silent, their gunnery crews under orders to speak only in shields and silence until the Obsidian Committee judged contrition genuine. Admirals, rattled, authorized a reconnaissance strike into Terran border sectors, but the task group found nothing. Earth's official territories were ghost town quiet, shipping lanes empty. Had humanity evacuated? Unthinkable. More likely the humans had coiled inside an iron labyrinth only they knew how to navigate. Directorate citizens, non-human species who had seldom wrestled with guilt, began to question their allegiance. On Neri's Kai Station, Valari merchants hosted screenings of the Ariata tape. Audiences wept luminous tears, their bioluminescent skin dimming as shame cooled adrenaline. The phrase Ashes of Ariata became shorthand for institutional betrayal. Street artistes painted the white palm on skyscraper spires. Some added a second, smaller palm behind it, an echo, a reminder there had been more than one child lost. Inside Umbra's Edge, Admiral Val tracked these cultural currents with the same keen eye she gave enemy movements. Moral swing was a current, she believed, stronger than any stellar wind. Harness it, and you could tack civilization itself toward brighter shores. But first the Directorate's keel must crack. She targeted Helios Citadel, part of the Oversight Corps, parked in geosync above the Directorate capital Carthus Prime. The Citadel was a labyrinth choked by plasma forts and self-forging drone clouds, no frontal assault feasible without millions of bystander casualties. Instead, Shade Fleet approached invisibly at the Nadir Pole, where magnetic storms rendered scanning erratic. They seeded the planet's ionosphere with polymer filaments loaded with captured Directorate confessions, budget records proving oversight kickbacks, covert notes instructing exemplar bombings. The filaments sparked, forming aurora banners across Carthus's night sky. Citizens looked up to see their ruler's own voices writ in green fire. Bomb the settlement. Fear is instructive. Lorik Vale. Children casualties immaterial. Oversight Memo 5Q. Riots erupted before dawn. While city garrisons scrambled to quell firebrands, Shade Fleet flickered into partial visibility, just enough to let one drone broadcast a shortwave pulse. Helios Citadel's automation grid responded to the pulse like a key meeting lock. It obeyed. Auto turrets swiveled inward, docking clamps released, and the entire Citadel drifted free of orbit, its thrusters firing outdated coordinates that steered it away from Carthus and straight into the glow of the rising system's star. Directorate Command could only watch as their symbol of fear melted across ultraviolet horizons. They tried to transmit retaliation orders. Umbra's Edge looped every command packet into a feedback snarl that spat the same line back at its senders. This is judgment, not war. For the first time in 500 years, the Central Forum adjourned without scheduling a new session. Members scattered to private bunkers, some resigned on live hollow. A handful recorded tear-stained mea culpas begging humanity for terms. No terms arrived. Only the blank hush where Earth's diplomats once pleaded for inclusion. In the hush, smaller truths crawled into daylight. Oversight whistle files identified covert vivisection labs experimenting on human POWs from border skirmishes long denied by Directorate newsrooms. Footage leaked. A boy no older than 10, wrist-bound, eyes glazed with fear. Medical drones hovered over him while distant voices discussed pain thresholds across mammalian resilience. The boy whispered one sentence that would haunt an empire. Mom said stars were safe. The clip ended there, but it played everywhere, from Neon Boulevard ads to smuggler mini-drives. Each replay was a nail hammered into the Directorate's coffin by its own hammer. On the Rim Moon Carthage station, a Directorate frigate crew mutinied, jettisoned their captain, and painted the white palm on their hull before surrendering to Shade Fleet censors. Admiral Val accepted peace codes, shipped rations to the mutineers, and left them free navigation rights. Mercy became propaganda sharper than any bombardment. Yet mercy could not be flawlessly universal. Intelligence flagged Commander Lorik Vale hiding within a fortified bunker beneath Oversight Annex 7 on Carthus's southern continent. Survivors of Ariata demanded justice, nothing abstract, but the man himself. Val authorized Spectre Team Coven to infiltrate the bunker. They moved like breathing shadow, disabling sensors with acoustic mirrors, subverting lock routines by rewiring circuits with human heartbeat patterns. Oversight devices never anticipated a soldier matching pulse codes with soft empathy. They dragged Vale into the pale dawn, shackled yet breathing, and exfiltrated him to an undisclosed orbit. His trial would not be broadcast. Earth sought no spectacle. But rumors leaked of a single windowless cell, its solitary wall projecting Ariata cliffs replaying endlessly from sunrise to ash. Whether that was truth or rebel embellishment mattered little. The myth sufficed. Within Umbra's war room, Admiral Val studied Directorate megastructures still untouched. Red glyphs pulsed at strategic nodes. Her AI council, Raven, queried readiness for Stage 3 capital severance. Val lifted a hand, poised to curl her fingers into the gesture that meant proceed. Before her knuckles bent, Raven announced an unscheduled communique, Directorate Provisional Assembly broadcasting unconditional cease authority request. They cite collapse of civilian order, plead for humanitarian mediation. Attached was a live feed. Provisional Speaker Gyrakel, first non-human to hold that chair, stood amid toppled banners. His voice raw, to any Terran frequency able to listen, we repent. We surrender governing mandate. We beg guardianship for our populations. Shield them from hunger, from chaos, from our own failure. Silence ruled Umbra's dais. Officers waited, breathing the static between heartbeats. Val released her hand, open palm. Directive Umbra transitions to phase sucker. Deploy relief barges, multi-species crews, clear corridors. Weapons cold unless fired upon. Shade Fleet acknowledged. Within hours, black hulls once dreaded glided over frightened worlds to drop medpods, water synth arrays, vast containers of seed grain engineered for every atmospheric profile. Terran volunteers walked shielded streets handing out tablets that played no propaganda, only instructions. How to purge corruption from municipal ledgers, how to elect councils with transparent vote chains, how to build desalination towers from scrap. Each device bore again the white palm. Some directorate mothers pressed the symbol to their foreheads like a blessing. On Earth, President Mara stepped outside the Andes vault at last. Reporters swarmed, but she spoke only one sentence before returning to silent halls. We serve warning once, mercy twice, and guardianship thereafter, if invited. In distant bars, smugglers raised toasted plastic mugs to the children who woke giants. The giants were not yet sleeping. They still watched the horizon where new tyrannies might grow. But for the first time since the diaspora, humanity's strength felt less like a clenched fist and more like an open hand, scarred, steady, willing to shield. Far beyond official charts, in the hollow of an abandoned comet, Shade Fleet's auxiliary yards began forging something neither dreadnought nor relief ship. Blueprints labeled it simply Anchorlight. When completed, it would broadcast stabilizing gravitational cords into war-torn systems, preventing orbital debris storms and making skies safe for farmers to look up again. Its hull designers etched an inscription onto the keel before the first plate cooled. The stars belong to those who guard hope. The words glimmered for a moment, then vanished beneath layers of pitch-dark alloy, visible only if you knew where to scrape. Ariada's cliffs remained silent, but kelp spores already drifted in the surf again, seeking rock to cling to, seeking a chance to grow. In the famished interim after Helios Citadel's slow immolation, the Directorate's worlds resembled a string of lanterns whose oil had run thin. Light remained, but the shapes behind the glass were gaunt, flickering, unsure. Shade Fleet's relief barges arrived like silent custodians of dusk, hulking silhouettes that breached atmosphere without sonic bloom, deploying petals of re-entry foam that melted into harmless rain. Where those petals touched scorched soil, wild seeds germinated overnight. Where they kissed tainted reservoirs, polymer chains bound toxins into harmless salt. Even skeptics found it difficult to nurse old prejudice while drinking the first clear water they had tasted in months. But humanitarian miracles bought only a window, not a verdict. In the ruins of Car-this Prime's executive quarter, a bitter wind crawled through smashed basilica arches, carrying the hiss of a population still split between awe and wounded pride. Thousands queued daily for Terran Medgel packlets, eyes downcast, cheeks hollow. A smaller cadre, decorated veterans, dispossessed merchants, children of directorate ministers, clustered in alleys stenciling a new sigil on rubble, a jagged red G laid across a broken white palm. The glyph meant gavel, street slang for the radical cell calling itself the G-Court. They preached that mercy from the oppressor proved Earth-planned eventual annexation. They shouted that directorate honor could be reclaimed only through steel. Their sermons would have remained fringe noise if not for a cache of oversight relic tech that surfaced on the black market. Plasma coil packs, Cortex grenades, orphaned exoframes, components scavenged from shade-stripped armories and smuggled out before Shade Fleet sealed vaults. The tech traded hands for vials of Terran antibiotic, for ration wafers, for any luxury a scarred populace craved. In back rooms lit by cracked data panes, the G-Court repurposed those relics, bolting them into patchwork suits that hissed and whined like wounded dragons, ugly miracles ready to breathe indiscriminate fire. Word of the G-Court filtered up to the Provisional Assembly, thence via secure corridor to Umbra's edge. Admiral Saran Val studied intercepted sloganeering. Reign of the Palm ends in ash, better ruin than rule by outsiders. She scrolled, her jaw tensed. Raven, her AI counselor, projected casualty forecasts if G-Court detonated even one Cortex grenade in Carthus's crowded water queues. The numbers turned Val's stomach. She summoned the Black Shield Detachment, Task Group Argentham, a cohort of volunteers drawn from Earth, Valari, even remorseful directorate officers. They wore charcoal armor devoid of insignia save a subdued blue ribbon on the wrist. Peace first, resolve unbroken. Their mission brief fit on a single line. Contain extremism without smothering liberty. Uproot infection. Spare surrounding flesh. Argentham touched down in Car-this Prime under the false dawn of orbital repair fires. At the same moment, across 14 planetary networks still half-functional, Shade Fleet quietly re-enabled the Directorate's news nets, but with filters stripped, disclaimers removed. Raw data storms gushed free, budget spreadsheets revealing aristocratic pandemics of graft, oversight memos recommending strategic famine to force compliance. Personal letters from loyalist admirals begging forgiveness after burying Ariada-grade massacres under red ink. Citizens glued themselves to holoscreens. Some fainted seeing their pay garnished to fund torture labs. G-Court rally swelled. Rage thrives when wounds reopen. But the mob splintered too. Families who had first believed Earth demons now watched their leadership's confession scroll across city spires. When G-Court pamphleteers shrieked for blood, grandmothers raised trembling hands and said, "Whose blood, child? I can't afford more graves." On day 3 of Argent deployment, a Cortex grenade vaporized a med tower queue. 17 dead, 40 burnt raw. Camera drones captured an exoframe assailant sprinting through phosphor smoke, banner of the Red G visible on his shoulder rig. Argent him did not pursue with rail rifles. Instead, they redirected combat drones to form a ring of light around the triage site, projecting a three-dimensional collage of every Directorate atrocity uncovered in the past week, each slide superimposed with forensic tags, dates, locations. Chain of command. The ring flashed for hours, drawing survivors and bystanders alike. Many wept, more knelt. Some tore the Red G graffiti from their jackets, hurling it into smoldering craters that still smelled of scorched antibiotic. Commander Ishan Paredes, Argent Field Lead, reported to Umbra's Edge, public passion pivoting. Extremist recruitment curved down 80%. Recommends surgical extraction of remaining G-nodes. Admiral Val approved and added a postscript. Don't martyr them. Unravel them. Paredes acknowledged. Argent teams executed night raids as silent as Shade Fleet doctrine. They used sonic nets to dampen screams, neural stun threads that left no cardiac spikes. G-Court bunkers folded open like papier-mâché. Leaders staring at rifle muzzles found themselves cuffed but unharmed, uplifted into Corvette holds filled with forensic accountants. Because Shade Fleet insisted every zealot witnessed the ledgers proving their rebellion fought for the same kleptocrats who had feasted on them. Some broke on the spot, others days later, but break they did. Word spread. Humans didn't just win, they rewrote the script until villains saw their reflection and retched. While Carthus simmered, a different theater unfolded along the Hollister Drift, a chain of gate-decommissioned mining worlds the Directorate had bled dry and abandoned. Relief scouts investigating silent distress beacons discovered the drift's last hab-nodes fused into jagged megastructures, as if someone had folded entire towns into origami shapes of glass and bone. No life signs, but energy traces older than Terran technology. Neutrino wakes shaped like Mobius bows, radiation spectra hinting at gravitonic prying tools. Raven's analysis matched nothing in Directorate or Earth archives. Admiral Val convened a roundtable with Terran exotheorists and refugee cryptohistorians. One silicate poet scholar from the long-subjugated Keln race spoke through vibrating sand. In our myths, shards return when Empire blood wets vacuum anew. Translation algorithms flagged shards as semi-legendary salvage predators, non-corporeal intelligences that leached entropy from dead civilizations, usually arriving centuries post-collapse. Hollister's anomalies indicated shards had come early, drawn by the Directorate's neon death spiral. Val's knuckles whitened. Humanity had anticipated insurgence and famine. It had not budgeted for cosmic carrion that tore matter to feed on Order's decay. Contact probability with inhabited worlds rose each day. Directorate infrastructure remained crippled. They needed to accelerate reconstruction. Patch society faster than predators could smell the wound. She authorized Project Beacon Rise. Deploy self-assembling orbital foundries built from reconfigured shade hull plates, seeded with nanoforges that digested space junk into lattice frameworks for power relays, comm towers, hydroponic spires. Beacon Rise nodes were gifts under stern conditions. Local communities must staff governance councils with multi-species parity and audit logs broadcast publicly via Dawnpath. The new pangalactic empathy chain Earth had strung after the Helios affair. Beacon Rise swept the quadrant like dawn indeed, gold skeletons blossoming in low orbit, sunlight rebounding from fresh alloy into streets below, powering lights that had guttered half a decade. Miners on Zelf Station applauded as a Beacon Rise wafer unfolded into a school archive. Children who had never held books touched holostacks humming with Terran translation engines ready to ingest their dialects. But hurry breeds hazard. In the Telkin expanse, a Beacon Rise scaffold recognized dormant mass driver segments as inert metal and subsumed them. When the node powered, residual codes fired an ancient rail slug straight through its primary thorium vault. The resulting detonation painted meteoric streaks across Telkin's twin moons. Casualty reports were mercifully low. Shade evac ships had inoculated civilians against industrial accidents, but media outlets pounced. Headlines: Terran tech burns sky. Who bears the cost? Extremists seized renewed footing. Directorate hardliners, seeing audience momentum, proposed a council in exile named the Iron Mantle, vowing to reclaim sovereignty once Earth stumbled again. Admiral Val met with Dawnpath sociologists. They advised restraint. Each misstep magnified by propaganda could undo trust. Shade Fleet slowed Beacon Rise expansion by 12%, rerouted extra quality assurance drones. Meanwhile, Raven warned that Hollister shard signals had trebled. Trade route chatter reported ghost lights at jump node Persei 05, a gateway recently reopened for relief convoys. Freighter Violet Marlin sent a partial burst. Thought we saw a mirror, stars reflecting wrong. Silhouettes inside the transmission ended. Wreckage analysis later showed molecular disassembly beginning at hull seams, as though rivets chose to evaporate. Val confronted the dilemma. Push relief slower to avoid accidents and lose tempo against shard incursion, or sprint and risk tragedies that fed insurgent narrative. She convened the Obsidian Committee via encrypted quantum veil. President Mara listened, face carved by fatigue and ferocity. Mara's answer: do both. Feed the hungry and barricade the dark. We have enough hands, if we trust allies. Allies, yes. The refugee scientists, the mutiny directorate engineers, the Kelm poet scholars, they became rapid integration cadres, rewriting beacon-rise safety protocols, embedding folklore heuristics that flagged mythic shard signatures before code compilers even finished. Construction rates rebounded. Accidents plunged. And still, the shards drifted nearer. Habitat Orithales, a ring-world fragment repurposed as an astronomical monastery, picked up the first unequivocal visuals. Iridescent filaments casting faint latticework against starlight, converging into asymmetrical polyhedra. They moved with elegance yet inefficiency, sometimes retreading orbits as if sniffing, sometimes vibrating until their edges blurred into probability foam. Terran linguists compared patterns to prime factor trees, Directorate ex-mathematicians to catastrophe manifolds. Everyone agreed on one aspect: the shards behaved like archivists searching ruins for pages. Shade Fleet declared a quarantine zone around Hollister and Persei sectors. Yet genuine quarantine is fictional in a galaxy of smugglers. Black market salvage teams, lured by rumors of wholly new physic, crept past patrol beacons. One such crew, the Gilt Pilgrim, broadcast exultation after netting a shard splinter no larger than a teacup. Their joy lasted 5 minutes until the ship's molecular cohesion reversed, bulkheads peeled outward like flower blooms. Patrol corvettes arrived to witness a silent sculpture of disintegrated crew, their atoms haloing the central shard fragment in a snow globe of woe. Umbra's Edge stored the footage under lock, determined not to fuel panic. Yet secrets are living things. They breed in dark substrates. Within days, encrypted markets auctioned Pilgrim footage. Proof Earth hides greater threat than Directorate. Iron Mantle fanatics devoured it. Carthage street corners bloomed again with a new stencil, a cracked white palm dripping black shard dust. Commander Paredes requested permission to intensify information ops. Val approved a subtler tactic: transparency rather than suppression. Shade Fleet released edited but honest footage, appended with analysis describing shard physics, emphasizing contagion risk, pleading for coalition watchfulness. The gamble paid. Civilians, faced with cosmic dread, found Iron Mantle rhetoric hollow. After all, who rallies behind flags while the universe itself teases disassembly? Provisional assemblies drafted the Covenant of Vigil, a charter pledging mutual aid and shard countermeasures. Signatories included human enclaves, Valari communes, Kelm memory tribes, even some Directorate border lords seeking redemption. The Covenant seal was, by unanimous vote, the same white palm, this time encircling a stylized shield of 12 interlocking species sigils. That appropriation transformed Earth's emblem from accusation into inclusive promise. Shade Fleet's next move would test that promise. Admiral Val proposed Operation Loom Warden: intertwine beacon rise grids across Covenant worlds into a resonant lattice generating low-grade probability harmonics, static that shards historically avoided, according to Orithales mathematicians. The lattice required synchronized pulse cannons based on Terran null-array derivatives, but to avoid old fears of monopoly, Earth offered full blueprints, open-sourced a long dawn path with commented code and manufacturing specs. Some envoys expected Earth to redact keystone modules. None were missing. Rivals scoured for backdoors, found only verbose documentation and optional dance-off Easter eggs uploaded by mischievous Terran interns. Laughter traveled corridors that once echoed with suspicion. While Loom Warden construction thundered across orbital docks, Shade reconnaissance drones detected shard skirmisher nodes breaching quarantine, folding silently past blockade walls, slipping between star pinches like insects through silk. Projected intercept time: 13 standard days. Val realized the lattice would not be ready. She needed delaying action, a chess move buying weeks. Interfleet Phantom Lance Unit 7 under Captain Carrier Stock, call sign Spectre Grace. Stock proposed a gambit: lure the shard vanguard towards systems seeded with experimental echo lures, devices simulating civilization collapse signatures 10,000 times louder than any real distress. The shards, gluttons for entropy gradients, would deter for the banquet, feasting on empty illusions while Loom Warden finalized. Risk was untenable. Should lures fail, shards would vector straight for populous regions. Val authorized anyway, trusting Spectre crews whose killboard of 0 civilian injuries glittered brighter than metals. Lure deployment commenced at the abandoned hydrogen scoops of Crescent Minor. Spectre corvettes stitched quantum echo chambers into the gas giant's magnetosphere, painting false death rattles, fabricated economic crashes, synthetic screams of imploding habitats, meticulously layered to smell irresistible. Shards pivoted exactly as predicted, polyhedra warping from FDL folds like geometric storms, converging on the giant seething belts. Security drones fed real-time imagery to Covenant command hubs. Citizens watched in horror wonder as shards gnawed electromagnetic phantom corpses, prisms flashing ultraviolet hunger. Stock whispered across private channel, "You wanted proof monsters exist. Here's your fairy tale tax bill." But shards, it turned out, were discerning diners. Minutes into their banquet, leading nodes detected harmonic discrepancies, no genuine decay in local probability. They shrieked, audible only to instruments, in split formation. Half resumed original trajectory toward inhabited space, half began hunting Spectre corvettes weaving through storm clouds. Stock ordered jettison of corvette decoy cores to keep pursuit busy. She then requested permission for the Pyre Gambit, remote ignite crescent miners' surplus deuterium pods, causing a magnetar-scale flare that would scramble proximity sensors and blind shards long enough to re-engage lures at corrected fidelity. Price: a gas giant turned into brief torch, plus any Spectre vessel inside 2 million kilometers, including Spectre Greys still tracking lure fidelity manually. Val hesitated for 3 breaths. President Mara's earlier words returned. "We are strong so others can feel safe." Val authorized. Stock saluted, old naval flourish, then cut comms. Beacons recorded the flare, a white wound across violet clouds, swallowed by its infant star's radiance. Spectre telemetry ended simultaneously. Shards blinked off sensors, dazzled and disoriented. Delay clock gained 32 vital hours. Shade Fleet memorialized Spectre crews with the Crescent Concord, an orbital archive naming every lost sailor, each entry hyperlinked to footage of the lives they protected. Public grief rippled, yet so did resolve. Iron Mantle propagandists, daring to mock Spectre sacrifice as Terran vanity, found themselves confronted by Kelm poet scholars who recited names of the saved until mockery curdled to shame. Loom Warden Lattice came online ahead of new shard approach. Pulse cannons thrummed subtle harmonics. Atmosphere on Sentinel worlds tingled like distant rain. Approaching shards encountered the hum and hesitated, polyhedra edges flickering uncertainly. Drones recorded them rotating as if sniffing, then withdrawing, sliding along lattice perimeters in search of breach. For now they settled to watch, a stalemate of alien appetite versus cooperative will. Carthus Prime, Month 6 post-Helios. Sunrise painted half-rebuilt plazas gold as provisional delegates convened under top banners of the Covenant. Commander Paredes attended as Argenhim envoy. Nearby, children chalked planetary maps on new pavement, marking relief routes, planning imaginary voyages under peacekeeper escorts. One girl raised her hand, asked if Terrans would leave now that Loomhum kept monsters away. Paredes knelt, answered, "We'll leave when you're so strong no tyrant tempts you, and so kind no ally doubts you. Then our ships become stories, and stories become choice." In orbit, Umber's edge drifted like a dark seed. Admiral Val turned from the glass, whispering to Raven, "We have 2 fires banked. One political, one cosmic. Keep them both from smothering the hopeful." Raven's voice, gentle static, statistical horizon improves. Hope's coefficient now greater than dread. Val allowed herself a small smile. She also knew horizons move. Somewhere beyond Loomwarden's furthest node, shard clusters realigned, new geometry, sharper facets. Analysts watching patterns shivered. The polyhedra now resembled flowers whose petals pointed inward, toward a hollow center of unfathomable dark. Whatever wandered there had begun not just to sniff ruin but to plan. When the shards began folding their polyhedral bodies inward, each petal bending as if tasting some unspoken algorithm, every sensor in Loomwarden's space flickered. Pulse cannon harmonics devolved into discordant hiss, as though the lattice suddenly sang a note too pure for its own throat. On Umber's edge, Raven graphs spiked. Harmonic phase drift, entropy vector divergence, luminous density rising like tide against seawall. Admiral Saran Val stood motionless in the dim halo of tactical projection, one thought ringing louder than klaxon: they learned to swim upstream. Shards had never strategized. Historical scraps described them as cosmic carrion, scavengers of collapsed probability. But these newly budded nodes operated in filigree choreography, exchanging microflashes of graviton that mapped Loomwarden frequencies in real time. Analysts watched them weave a countermelody delicate but growing sharper, cutting lattice resonance the way a violin's false note shreds an orchestra. President Alice Mara joined via quantum veil, hair unbound, eyes red-rimmed from sleepless translation loops. Val briefed her in 30 breathless seconds. Mara absorbed, then said, "Shards have become predators, not scavengers, because we've provided a banquet of order. They're evolving on our scaffolding. Solution isn't thicker walls, it's shifting the meal." "Agreed," Val said. "We must lower coherence where shards feed and raise it where life resides, like luring fireflies from wheat to night lamps." Enter Anchorlight, still skeletal in the Comet Yard, meant as a gentle stabilizer, not a bulwark. Its design, project gradient harmonics that dial orbital chaos down into life-friendly equilibria. But spectro-engineer Dr. Alaric Gwyn proposed inversion. Crank Anchorlight's modulators pass safety into a chaos bloom, temporary storm that drenches outer sectors in raw indeterminacy. That much disorder would taste acrid to shards, drive them off, or force them into a singular focus point where Shade Fleet might negotiate. Or, if all else failed, cage. Problem: Anchorlight incomplete, lacking core probability engine dubbed Heartforge. Forge blueprint derived from null array science plus shard residue risk coded for meltdown if overstressed. Finishing it in ordinary time required months. They had days. Nguyen offered a shortcut. Sacrifice Umbra's Edge's silent drive manifold, the darkest stealth the fleet possessed, to replace the Heartforge missing shell. Doing so would burn Umbra's signature asset and maroon Val's flagship in normal relativistic space for years. Shade Fleet without its shadow heart would bleed surprise advantage. Val's jaw tightened. She flashed a private query to Mara. Earth's leader replied by crafting a single ideogram on her slate, child's palm overlaying open clock face. The future already asks. Val nodded once. Strip the manifold. Move anchor light into loom warden focus. I'll fly escort. The comet yard bloomed like forged dawn. Drones peeled Umbra's manifold plates, glowing black-violet, ferrying them to anchor light's ribs that shivered hungry for completion. Engineers worked in exoshells, perspiration frosting visors. Every bolt was welded by micro-sunbursts. Meanwhile, shards converged on perimeter nodes, shredding sentry drones by rewriting atomic bonds, steel to dust, ceramics to shimmering gases. Covenant worlds watched live streams with held breath. Some recited prayers, others recited algorithmic mantras taught by Valari monks, belief that patterns chanted by hearts could damp cosmic hunger. Commander Ishan Paredes and Arjun him embedded inside this orbital array when magnetic storms heralded shard scouts. Paredes directed phaser mirrors to reflect lattice interference back on itself, a blinding strobe distracting the scouts from tinder convoys carrying beacon-rise technicians to final anchor points. Scouts reacted like hornets slapped by rain. Two sliced toward the orbital array. Paredes ordered evacuation but remained, siphoning extra gigawatts from city grids into array capacitors. He flooded local space with chaotic pulses, loose white noise the shards found distasteful. The scouts veered, leaving the orbiting skeleton intact but collapsing Paredes into unconsciousness from neural overstimulation. Medpods revived him 8 minutes later. He re-entered command with blood seeping from nostrils. Asking only still working, before continuing. Planetary feeds carried his image. Officer with gauze packed under eyes still issuing comm orders. The mimetic impact dwarfed any rally speech. Anchor light powered at 64% when first shard major formed a crown spire. 33 polyhedra locked into radio ring that rotated until internal void pointed at heart of loom warden. Habitats under that vector reported dizziness, instruments jittering as random events inverted, coins tossed landed on edge. Clock hands slid backward 1 tick between seconds. Spire began inhaling lattice energy, twisting harmonic threads like yarn into mouth of theoretical beast. Nguyen yelled over intercom. If Spire completes resonance inversion before we crest 90%, Bloom will detonate inside Loom, not outside. We feed Monster our marrow. Val rerouted every remaining cutter drone, told them to intercept Spire interior though they'd likely be shredded. Cutter Squadron Sable Delta answered with chorus for the seeds. They dove into Crown Spire's hollow axis wrapped in ablative foam. Radiation telemetry screamed. Video lost. Yet fragments showed foam pod releasing coronal flares of nanoferrite dust that clogged Spire's internal junctions. The structure wobbled, radio ring misphased, giving anchor light 4 precious minutes. Inside Edge hangar bay stripped of stealth drive, Val boarded Interceptor Lumen Fox. She commanded fleets, not snub fighters, in decades, but childhood reflex guided her through launch corridor glowing with code scribbles. Crew left messages across bulkheads. Bring dawn. Lumen Fox and 7 sister craft accelerated along comet spine, forming diamond wedge. Anchor light hit 92%. Shards formed second crown and outer halo. Pulse cannon shifted to protective wave bundling fragile anchor with overlapping resonance shells. First wave of stray shard missiles, spheres of probabilistic destabilization, struck shells, ripping harmonic cloth. Tears sizzled, but stitched themselves courtesy of Valari chant algorithms now baked into control firmware. Engineers on beacon rise platforms took turns humming low drones. Mics fed to lattice as biometric stabilizers. At 98%, Heartforge roared. Anchor lights completed core yawned a lens of kaleidoscope dark. Lumen squad cut engines, drifting near singular moment as Forge inhaled disorder from local metric like megalung. Then a chime, tone nobody programmed, rang across channels. Baby bell, simple and pure. At 100% output, chaos bloom erupted. Picture, a black rose unfolding across starfield, petals of controlled unpredictability. Inside petals, physics jittered sideways, shard crown spasmed, losing radial sync, polyhedra edges crumbled to particulate prisms fleeing bloom perimeter like panicked birds. Anchor light rotated again, phase 2, exhaling order pulses along tightly collimated beams aimed at Covenant coordinates, reinforcing what Bloom had purposely thinned elsewhere. Balance shifting. Life zones gleamed with statistical clarity, shards forced into patchy fog. A sudden silence fell upon Comnet, then Orathal's monks gasped, shards broadcasting raw pattern code not seen before question waveforms. They were speaking. Raven parsed chaos wave into topological quatrain. Entropy offered. Reject unnatural feast? Show hearth untasted. Shadowbright scene quakes our quill. Exchange. Nguyen cross-checked. Translation rough, but just clear. Shards sought negotiation. confused by feast/poison interplay. They'd never encountered civilization that could deliberately modulate cosmic order. Val saw opportunity beyond repulsion. She toggled lattice speakers, used Dompath to craft answer equal parts math and empathy, demonstration of cyclic breathing of order/disorder key to well-being metrics of sentient populations. Display included archive of Ariata, Helios fall, Karthus healing, Paredes bleeding nose still commanding. Closing note a simple curve, child's palm traced and probability amplitude, opening into infinite spiral of cooperative futures. Pulse broadcast left anchor light and soared across bloom. Shard stilled. Crown rings unraveled into strands weaving orbit around bloom. Weaving not devouring. Polyhedra surfaces shifted from mirrored dark to spectral transparency, revealing nested Mandelbrot-like hearts, spinning slower, as though exhaling. Orwithal's instruments registered shift, shards feeding on raw decay now fed on curated fluctuation, entropy filtered through anchor light's bloom. They perch like bees on nebular flowers now intentionally grown for them at galaxy's safer outskirts. Umbra's edge status board rolled into green. Threat indices plummeted. Val slumped in cockpit. She realized a bigger future had just budded, humanity not only guardian, but gardener of cosmic appetites. Aftermath unfolded like sunrise across debris fields. Covenant declared day of quiet loom. Not victory festival, reflection vigil. On Karthus, murals replaced red G with woven emblem, white palm cupping shard petal luminous. Families visited Ariata memorial holograms. They saw footage of self-repaired kelp terraces, a new fusion core delivered by Valari engineers powered by solar sails capturing anchor light pulse. Iron Mantle descent dwindled. Some former leaders accepted amnesty. Others joined shard liaison programs studying polyhedral bees pollinating chaos blooms far from inhabited lanes. Spectre Grace crew names engraved inside anchor light's heart housing, indestructible script viewable only during scheduled maintenance cycles, so each engineer must pause and read the cost of stability. Nguyen collaborated with Kellen scholars to blueprint Starlace, network of micro-bloom gardens to lure shards across galactic void-like way stations for entropy custodians, universe's cleaners now partners rather than predators. Argenham rotated home, but Paredes refused rest until Karthus children finished chalk map updated with new safe routes. When done they pressed dusty palms on his armor, leaving pastel prints, makeshift medals. Umbra's Edge, deprived of Shadow Drive, committed to serve as moving academy, teaching transparent governance across border systems. Its once invisible hull now coated with murals drawn by refugee artists. Waves, palms, petals, dawn. President Mera addressed Galaxy once, through Dawnpath Joint Assembly. Power that hides breeds tyrants. Power that kneels breeds victims. We choose a different stance, standing with hands open, palms forward, weaving tapestry none alone could picture. We will guard threads, prune rot, and feed even the dark wings so they sing far from nursery worlds. No applause track followed. Instead, each delegate placed palm against lens, broadcasting silent concord. Shards answered days later with violet aurora cascading across beacon rise skyways, mathematical haiku etched in particle drift. Dawnpath translated 8 words. Concur. We drink where gardens consent to grow. Galactic Night side, east. Years rolled. Newborn academies taught course titled Probabilistic Diplomacy and Quiet Propulsion. Rural planets recorded shard meteor shows scheduled as children festivals. Directorate, now Harmonic Directorate, drafted Constitution under Covenant oversight. Article 1. No law shall blind the ledger from the eyes of the least among us. Earth remained vigilant but less grim. Shade hulls docked under coastal sunsets for repaint by school groups. Obsidian Committee dissolved itself, archived under clause emergency fulfilled. Admiral Val, silver streak through hair, planted an oak beside Andy's vault, said she owed the universe one living monument without circuits. Anchor light drifted where Comet Yard once hid. Its petals pulsed with slow tides, chaos inhaled. Order exhaled, heartbeat of galaxy learning to breathe in chorus. Some travelers crossing halo nights still glimpsed a distant flower of black violet in bloom and asked what war birthed it. Elders answered. Not war, child. A promise kept, a wound woven, a hand extended, even toward the hungry dark, until the dark remembered how to glow. And among myriad stars a faint bell chimed. Echo of Spectre Grace's flare, now woven into universal music, forever reminding hunter and guardian alike that ashes can seed gardens, silence can teach melodies, and strength, when guided by open palms, can invite the bleakest geometry to join the dance.